Everybody, or almost everybody, is familiar with the story in the Bible of the Good Samaritan who stops to help a wounded man lying by the side of the road. And most of us would like to believe we would do the same. We'd also like to believe that a young college student like David Cash would have been good Samaritan enough to have stepped in and done something, anything, when he saw another young man, his best friend, assaulting a little girl who minutes later his best friend raped and murdered. But for the past few months, David Cash has been the subject of nationwide outrage over his decision to walk away and not even report the rape and murder of 7-year-old Sherice Iverson. The 19-year-old Cash, a sophomore at the University of California at Berkeley and a nuclear engineering major, has become an outcast on campus.
We want Cash out! We want Cash out!
Many of his fellow students there are demanding the university expel him. They are infuriated not only by his failure to save Sherice Iverson, but also by remarks he made this summer on a Los Angeles radio program.
How much am I supposed to sit down and cry about this? I mean, let's be reasonable here. Is my life supposed to halt for days, weeks, and months on end?
And if that weren't bad enough, he added this.
The simple fact remains, I do not know this little girl. I do not know starving children in Panama. I do not know, people that die of disease in Egypt.
Some people have called you the bad Samaritan. You think that's an appropriate name?
No, most certainly not. These names that people call me, I've been called the antithesis of today's teens, a bad Samaritan, a textbook sociopath. I've been called it all.
David Cash's trouble started just before he enrolled at Berkeley. One night last year, his father took him and his best friend Jeremy Strohmeyer, seen together in this home video, to a casino near Las Vegas. Surveillance cameras there show the two boys playing video games at 3:30 in the morning. Strohmeyer then spots Sherice Iverson, whose father was gambling nearby. The cameras record Sherice walking into a women's restroom, followed by Jeremy Strohmeyer, and then a minute later by David Cash.
When I entered the bathroom, Jeremy Strohmeyer and Sherice Iverson were throwing paper towels at each other. They were just playing, seemed just horsing around. And it came to a point where Jeremy grabbed her and took her into a stall, to one of the bathroom stalls. I went into the adjacent stall, looked over, and Jeremy was restraining her with his left hand over her stomach and his right hand over her mouth.
And she was trying to scream.
He was muffling her screams.
Cash says he then heard Strohmeyer threaten Sherice Iverson, saying, "Shut up or I'll kill you."
I tapped him on the head, because it was completely out of character, and he didn't really respond to me. He gave me kind of a blank stare. So, in my opinion, it was like time for me to get out of there.
Why?
Well, when an 18-year-old male grabs a 7-year-old child, that's not a position I want to be in. Based on what I saw, it wasn't something I wanted to stick around and see what would materialize.
Did you say to him, "Jeremy, come on, stop, let's go"?
I was giving him a look as if, that he shouldn't be doing that.
But you never said, "Stop, get out of here, this is wrong."
Verbally, I did not say that, but my body language certainly suggested it.
According to the surveillance cameras, David Cash walked out of the bathroom about 2 minutes after he entered. Strohmeyer was seen leaving some 22 minutes later. But Sherice Iverson never left. Her body was discovered in the bathroom. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. What did he say to you when he came out?
He immediately confessed.
Confessed?
Yes.
What did he say?
He looked at me and said, I killed her.
Just like that?
Just like that.
After Strohmeyer confessed to Cash that he had killed Sherice Iverson, they went to other casinos where they played slot machines and rode roller coasters for several hours before heading back home to California. Did you think to turn him in to the police?
The thought crossed my mind, but I didn't act on it.
Why?
I know that his day of reckoning is coming. I didn't want to be the one that turned him in.
You felt that was more important than to report a murderer?
Even though he had told me that he had committed murder, it was really hard for me to fathom Jeremy as a quote-unquote murderer.
But he told you he was.
I understand that, but he's also my best friend. You know, we're taking AP English together.
But after Cash and Strohmeyer returned home, friends who had seen the surveillance tapes played on the local news tipped off police. Strohmeyer was charged with murder, and 3 weeks ago, to avoid the death penalty, he pled guilty. He is now serving life in prison without parole. But David Cash, who watched as Strohmeyer physically assaulted a little girl just minutes before she was murdered, has not been charged with any crimes.
He's evil! He's evil!
Yolanda Manuel is Sherice Iverson's mother. She is estranged from Sherice's father and was not at the casino with him the night of the murder. She has collected 20,000 signatures urging prosecutors to charge Cash with a crime.
He seen Jeremy Strohmeyer put his hands over her mouth and carried her in the bathroom. He seen it. Anytime you stand and you look at something happening to anybody, not only a child, any human being, a dog, a cat, or whatever, you've seen that happen. So you a murder within yourself. You still got the blood of my babies on your hand.
You think he is an accessory to murder?
Yes, he is. I think he should be charged with accessory to the murder of my child because he could have did something to stop it. He didn't do anything.
Peggy Lean is the deputy district attorney in Nevada, whose office made the decision not to bring charges against Cash. How would you characterize the conduct of David Cash in this case?
Morally reprehensible. And it's unfathomable that someone could see conduct of that nature and not take some form of action.
Why then didn't your office charge him with any crime?
Moral reprehensibility isn't a crime. You have to participate, do something affirmatively to assist in the commission of a crime. Watching and failing to report, regrettably, is not a crime.
But, I mean, isn't there something wrong with that? I mean, you've got someone who could have saved that child's life and who did nothing about it, and yet there's no way to hold him accountable.
There may not be any way to hold him legally accountable. He's certainly accountable in the court of public opinion, and he's certainly accountable ultimately in how people respond to his morally bankrupt behavior.
We asked David Cash to explain his behavior to a group of fellow students we assembled on the campus of Berkeley, and he agreed.
A lot of people say, you know, how come you didn't stop the murder? How come you stop the rape? You know, I never felt anything was going to happen to her. If I thought that, you know, that was going to happen, of course I would have stopped it. You know, I don't want this on my conscience that, you know, oh, you know, I allowed, you know, somebody to die.
Is it on your conscience?
Not to the extent that
yes most people. Yes or no? Is it on your
not
conscience?
To the extent that most people would want it to be.
Yes or no?
Not to the extent that most people would want it to be.
Okay.
I really have a hard time believing that you thought that nothing wrong was going on.
You know,
Doesn't it alarm you that for 25 minutes he's still in the bathroom with a 7-year-old girl? I mean, that's just not a normal occurrence, and wouldn't you want to go back in there?
Okay, let's think of it. Let's say after 25 minutes I come to the conclusion that he's murdered this girl, all right? Do I storm into the bathroom, you know, and then what happens to me? Okay, let's say a security guard walks in. You know, I'm sitting here, you know, with my best friend with the dead body there. You know what I mean?
I think it's very clear to all of us that David Cash's mindset was, what is best for me? What is going to keep me out of trouble? You have expressed no remorse, no feeling that you felt bad at all that this young girl was murdered.
How is it that you can sit there and feel comfortable with yourself waiting 3 days when you could have assisted the police in pursuing Jeremy? You could have done any number of things, but you did nothing.
It's easy for you people to say, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. Like, you didn't know Jeremy. But, you know, at the time, I made the best possible decision.
You still stood by and let a little girl be raped and killed, and I don't think we should stand by and let you get away with that.
Okay, you just said I stood by and let a little girl get raped and killed.
Yeah.
That is wrong. I did not see that. I did not witness that. I did not know that was happening.
David Cash was unable to convince these students that he belongs at Berkeley. They say they want him out. Do you have any intention of leaving?
No, I do not. That would be foolish.
Why?
Berkeley is one of the best engineering schools in the country. You know, why would I leave? You know, that would be stupid.
A number of students say that they're going to take matters into their own hands and in essence, run you out of here. Can they?
They will fail. I have no intention of leaving.
Despite the uproar on campus, Berkeley Chancellor Robert Berdahl says he cannot expel Cash because he hasn't committed a crime and he hasn't broken any university rules.
David Cash has done reprehensible things in not acting, I think, to intervene. He said outrageous things. But even when students act in an outrageous fashion, we can't simply take an arbitrary action against them on the basis of some kind of moral outrage that people feel.
Does the university have a moral responsibility to do something about students who behave so atrociously?
What has offended the community sensibilities, I think, are the things that he has said. Berkeley is, for better or worse, the home of the free speech movement, and we are not about to punish students simply for exercising the right of free speech, no matter how outrageous and objectionable things they may say.
What David Cash did or did not do in this case is perfectly legal, not just in Nevada, but in nearly every state. But the conduct of Cash has prompted legislation calling for a Good Samaritan law, which would require citizens who witness a sexual assault or other violent crime against children to report it to the police. Surprisingly, it does not have the support of many in law enforcement, including the prosecutor in the Sherice Iverson case.
Should we as a society punish this as a crime? It's basically an attempt to legislate morality. And historically, we haven't been very successful in our efforts to legislate morality. From prohibition to prostitution, you can tell somebody not to do it, you can regulate it, you can punish it. But ultimately, it doesn't do a very good job of changing the conduct.
Sherice Iverson's mother disagrees with the prosecutor. Yolanda Manuel says a Good Samaritan law is the only way to punish the David Cashes of the world.
David Cash needs to be locked up. I want his education taken away from him. My child would not be able to go on with her education. She was 7 years old. She would not be able to go to junior high. She would not be able to go to high school or college and beyond.
Have you ever said anything that would say, Miss Manuel, I'm sorry about what happened. I wish there was something I could have done. Have you ever expressed that to her? No. Maybe not in those exact words, but you haven't.
No, but I mean, that's definitely a good idea that I definitely should.
A year and a half later, yeah, it is kind of a good idea. You disgust me, seriously. Like, it's taking all my energy to sit here and sit in front of your face. But yeah.
You know, the simple fact is there's one person that killed Sherice Iverson. There's one guy, Jeremy Strohmeyer.
And there's one other person who could have stopped it.
Technically, I could have stopped it, but based on what I saw, I didn't feel her life was in danger.
If you could go back to that night and do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I don't feel there's much I could have done differently.